I'm not going to debate that it's not the right one. I won't debate that. I will debate the easy one. But the right one. You want to play back? Hey, nice act. Director Barnes. Nice act.
Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get this meeting started. We'll call this session to order. It is Thursday, September 13, 2018. We will start by a pledge of the flag. If I could, Director Orzali.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14, replay on Monday, September 17th at 6 p.m. and Tuesday, September 18th at 3 p.m. on Channel 14. Webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district's website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. Right now is a public's opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the district jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers this evening?
Yes, we have Roger Mitchell.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mitchell.
Evening, directors, chief, staff. Roger Mitchell, longtime resident of the district. I'm here tonight. I was here last meeting to promote our fundraising dinner for the restoration of Rio Linda's second ever fire engine. Those of you that already purchased tickets, we appreciate it very much. It'll be on the 13th of October, full barbecue meal, all you can eat. I know many of you have attended before, so it'll be a great event. As always, we have a world-class speaker. It will be Supervisor Sue Frost this year. Our speaker last year was Chief Ted Harms, and this year we are very lucky to have a person of world class just to introduce our speaker this year. And that person will be Mr. Ted Harms, chief of this fire department. So we are proud to have that. And I laid on the dais in front of you, there's 3 pieces that are already restored for the truck. In front of the board chairperson, there's an axe. In front of Director Woods, there's the holder that the axe fits in. And then to the immediate right of the board chair, Mr. Barnes, is a bracket from the rear of the hose bed. And those are examples of the quality of work that's being done on the truck. And I'll take a minute to give you an idea of the work that goes into it. And I believe that Director Grant Gould can appreciate this because I know a little of his background in restoring cars. So whether it's the axe holder or the piece from the hose bed, first you have to take it off the vehicle. Then it won't come off. So it's using penetrating oil, and it still doesn't come off. Then you have to use a torch to heat different parts of it to finally to break it loose. So now you have this piece off the truck. Now, because we were lucky enough that all the artwork on the truck was still visible because it had been stored inside. So now we have to get the dirt and the grease off without removing the artwork. Once that's done, then there's photographs taken of all the artwork, then diagrams made of the artwork, then it's sandblasted, then each piece is hand primed, 3 different coats sanded between that, and 3 finish coats of paint sanded between each one. Then it gets delivered to the artist. And those are the finished products that you see. So most people, when they look at these parts, they wonder, oh, gee, they repainted this. There's a lot more work that goes into it than just paint. The axe before you, the handle was broken, and we could have replaced the handle. But what we do know from doing research is that the handle is actually a handle that came with the truck from La France in 1927. So what we wanted to do was to keep that handle, glue it back together. You can look close, you'll see where it was repaired. There's fingerprints of those firemen years ago on that handle, so that's why we didn't replace the handle. As you can see, of course, the fire axes weren't chrome plated. What we like to say is there's just a few little touches on the truck that are going to be better than it was when it was new. When she served Real Linda, she had her working clothes on. And now we're going to give her her prom dress. So that's why you see little touches of the chrome on the axe. So at this time, I thank you all for listening. I thank you for buying the tickets you have and supporting the fundraiser, supporting the restoration. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the fundraiser or the restoration work.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? No? Thank you for the clarification on the axe, and make sure it wasn't a representation of my position here on the board, getting the axe. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Moving on to the consent items. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda?
Motion to make a motion. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets, Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the presentation item, EMS Division Update, Assistant Chief Law.
Good evening, Directors and Chief Harms. I'm Barbie Law, and I'm your new EMS Division Chief, and I'm here tonight to give you a brief EMS Division update. First, I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I've been with the district for 25 years now, but I've also been a paramedic for 30 years working locally in Sacramento, Yolo, and Placer counties. I've been an EMS educator at American River College since 1997, working closely with Director Gould in the EMT and paramedic programs. During my time at Metro Fire, I have served in the EMS division before, working as the EMS administrative captain, and I was assistant chairperson of our CQI committee for 15 years. I currently, at the countywide level, am a member of the Public Health Advisory Board, and I also serve with Sacramento County EMS Agency on the Technical Advisory Committee and the Data Committee, which are subcommittees of the CQI process. So, organizational staff, we've been going through some changes in the EMS division as people are transitioning back to the line after serving in the division for a couple of years. But currently we have 3 administrative support people, Carmen Gandara and Marcy Mateo and Cynthia Hamilton, who are serving as our system administrators for our EPCR program. So although you see them listed as office techs, I truly feel that they're EMS specialists and have kept us moving forward with our electronic patient care reporting and the reports that are generated for you to keep you informed on the status of our system. We also have a new member, EMS Battalion Chief Rick Griggs. He's new to the division. And then we continue to have our 3 shift captains that oversee the EMTs and paramedics on the line. Shani Cornell, Tracy Valentine, and our newest captain, Steve Craig, who's here tonight with us, joined the division several weeks ago. On the administrative side, we have a new captain that came in, Captain Brian Benton. He's going to be replacing Captain Davis, who's finishing up his time in the division. And he's been a great resource for us, and he's going to be missed, but he's getting Brian up to speed to try and fill his shoes. And then we have Captain Jamie Poole and firefighter Phil Hart. The suppression folks that are in admin actually work to support Chief Griggs and our training education programs, as well as special projects for the division. A little bit about the EMS battalion chief position. That is new for us this year. So Rick's primary duties right now are serving as our CQI manager and developing the continuing training and education programs for our EMTs and paramedics. A little bit about Rick, for those of you that may not know him. Rick joined the fire service here locally in 1987, and he's been a paramedic since 1989. Rick was instrumental in actually developing the CQI program for Florin Fire back in the 80s. So, and he also served on Metro Fire's CQI committee up until 2011 when he promoted. So I feel like we truly have the best person for the job in this new role to make it successful and get it started off on the right foot as we move forward. A little bit about our current transport system. We do currently have 13 24-hour dual-role ambulances that are staffed by firefighter paramedics, so they can serve as firefighters or paramedics. And they're supplemented by our 2 ambulances out in the Rancho Murrieta Slough House area that are cross-staffed by the firefighter paramedics that are there. So they take the first call that comes available, and then you have a suppression company that immediately moves up, so we maintain that fire suppression capability in that area. We're also supported by our single role paramedic program. Currently we have 4 24-hour units in that program. They are on 12-hour shifts, but they're on duty round the clock. And then we have 5 additional peak hour SRP cars that are on duty during the daylight hours when our call volume is heavier. We typically slow down at night and don't have a need to have as many vehicles on the road. We also have 5 reserve ambulances in the event that we had a surge in call volume. We can upstaff 5 ambulances with firefighter paramedics to take that call load. We also continue to enjoy a strong relationship with our partner, American Medical Response. AMR provides us with 4 12-hour units a day during the daytime as well during our busiest times. And with Notice, we're also able to rely on them if we have planned events, large events such as the Mather Air Show. We can look to them for some additional support and keeping as many rigs as possible on the street to handle the call volume. Call volume for us in 2016 and 17 has been relatively constant. We ran 81,000 calls in 2016, slightly less in 2017. You see your totals down at the bottom there, and our transport rate of our call volume has remained consistent in the high 60th percentile. Our busiest ambulances so far this year, actually our busiest unit is one of our single roll cars. We do have several ambulances that are on track to break the 5,000 call mark this year. What you're seeing here is just their transports, but they are actually running quite a few calls. Also of note, I know the directors like to know what's going on as far as the automatic aid agreements that we have in the area. So we did pull some information for 2017. Last year, we had 7,334 transports in our neighboring agencies. We had to go in to support them with our boundary DOP system. And then conversely, we had 6,483 times where our partners in outside agencies came into the district to transport patients. So we are going out of the district more than we are receiving assistance from our partners. Some successes to talk about in the division in the last few years, which I would like to acknowledge actually Chief Randall Hine. All of these accomplishments were achieved underneath his tutelage and the team that he had put together, so I can't take credit for what we're going to talk about here. We have a renewed relationship with the California Fire and Rescue Training Authority for our EMS training and continuing education. So in the last couple of years, we've put every everybody through ACLS. Upcoming here at the end of the month, we're going to start our hand TV pediatric care, and they'll also be offering a pre-hospital trauma life support. So all of those programs are going to enhance our EMT and paramedics skill set when they're out in the field. A direct result of all the training we've been doing, we have seen an increase in our ROSC rates out in the field. So from 2017, over the last 12 months, we've had an increase of return of pulses from 20% to 26% of the patients that we're transporting. And I would say that we can tie that to a direct result of the advanced cardiac life support training that everybody went through, as well as the implementation of the Lucas devices for automatic CPR on all of our ambulances, and the video laryngoscope training that all of our paramedics received. Our overall intubation rate has increased in the last 12 months by 6% as a result of that training. From a customer service standpoint, we consistently, for the last 4 years, have had high customer service ratings on the surveys that are returned back to us. And our single-role paramedic program continues to be a very successful tool for recruiting people and bringing them into our fire service family from the ground up. 56% of those folks, since the inception of the program, have gone on to become firefighter paramedics. But also, of that group of people, now 5% of them have promoted further and have gone on to become an engineer. And in 2019, for the first time, we will have 20% of those folks are going to be available to take the captain's exam. So we're truly helping people come in from the ground level and start a career and work their way up through the ranks and supporting the community that they live in. Although we have many successes to talk about, as any agency, we do have some challenges facing our EMS system, and they're not unique to Metro Fire. I would like to point out that, nationwide, there are recruitment problems for EMTs and paramedics. Part of that is due to the aging population demographic. There's a decrease in folks coming into public safety positions, and the demand for EMTs and paramedics is expected to grow by the U.S. Department of Labor by 15% by 2026. With that, although we've been successful in promoting our single-role folks, we're also promoting our folks out of that program, and so maintaining paramedics and EMTs on those rigs is challenging at times. We are doing 3 academies a year at this point to keep people coming in and moving through that process. Another challenge this week is Suicide Prevention Week for public safety providers. EMTs and paramedics do face a higher instance of PTSD than the general population, but we are actively working with labor and management on health and wellness programs to make sure that our providers are supported when they have a challenge in their life. Lastly, undercompensated care is a problem across the country. Sorry, Chief Harms, that was more than 10 minutes. Our payer mix has been changing drastically since 2012, and we have seen an increase in our Medicare and Medi-Cal patients. And those types of insurances typically enjoy a lower cost recovery than your private insurance payers. So that is a challenge, but that's why it's important that we maintain our participation in the GEMT and IGT programs and stay active politically to make sure those programs are there for us into the future. So although we've had challenges, we do remain dedicated to providing a high quality of patient care in the community and maintaining the 3 system components that we have now, both our dual role ambulances, our single role providers, as well as our private-public partnership that we enjoy now. So if you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Sorry.
No apology needed. Thank you for the report. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. You said that you had some relation with the Los Rios College District. What's your position?
I'm an adjunct faculty member at the college with the EMT and paramedic programs.
You were on the faculty at
I'm an
Los
adjunct
Rios?
faculty instructor with the EMT and paramedic programs.
How long have you been there?
Since-
I've never seen you at the board meeting or something like that.
Oh, I've been teaching at the college since 1997,
Oh, okay.
so it's been a while.
Thank you.
I'm
Director Gould.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chief Law. A couple of things. First off, I think it's important to, if you go back a couple of slides, to see the 6% increase in what we consider to be a field save. I think about all the pressures that are in our system with call volume and all of the issues you've identified tonight, and yet we still see that we're increasing lives saved in our system. I think that's huge. And then the other piece, and there's a lot of great stuff here. I could go on for hours about all the great stuff, but we won't, because apparently you have some limit that I've extended to 15 minutes, okay? Because it's time we celebrate this group of individuals who do a huge task in our system. And I'm really happy to see these things. I think it's also important to recognize that our payer mix is changing. And so those folks that are out there and don't understand some of the way we do business with ambulances have to understand that we're providing a service and not receiving compensation to just even break even in that regard. So when people talk about their property tax payments and all of that, this is some of the services that they're helping us provide to the citizens. I think that's another big piece of this. And I don't know that you necessarily address this. Maybe you did in some of the mental health issues, but our unit hour utilization is out of control, as you probably know. And you look at these call volumes. I mean, we are beating our men and women up all day, every day, because we simply need to mature our dispatch, the way we dispatch, so that we can get some of our BLS calls sent in other places, and the apparatus maybe not roll. So as you all know, this is a passion that I could speak about forever, but I think we've got to be very careful with what we're doing to our men and women long term when it comes to the sheer call volume that we're putting our men and women under, and then the equipment break, that has an impact there. So I'm super excited that you got 10 minutes. I know next time it'll be more than that. No. Probably close to 20, because we're talking about what we do 80% of the time. And then one last thing, I love this chart, but I'll say it like I've said for 20 years. That chart about the org situation you're faced with is awesome, but I still think we need some more support staff in that division to handle the volume of what EMS is doing in our organization. So that's my 10 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for allowing me to extend that time.
Thank you. Director Orzali.
I couldn't
Not off
resist,
the hot seat yet.
couldn't resist the opportunity to extend the time even further. The reference to the Lucas devices, I was an early advocate for the Lucas devices in the district, and I'd like to take a moment to express my appreciation personally to Chief Harms for implementing the Lucas device across the district. This is an automatic compression device. And fundamentally, what happens is, and one of my primary motivations was not only to help the parent, the patient, but also to help the firefighter, because in that compression circumstance, all the data talked about was the firefighters becoming exhausted, injuring their backs, injuring their necks in the process of doing compressions. The Lucas device allows them to do endless compressions because it doesn't become exhausted. And you can adjust them based on the response of the patient. So it's a great piece, and again, it was Chief Harms, the champion, bringing that in on a district-wide basis, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I had a question, but I'll pass.
Pardon me?
I'll pass.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for coming out in the report. Also, thanks for bringing your team here. It's great to see everybody in the audience. We always like to, if we can, get them out here to talk. It'd be awesome. I know it's what they don't like to do. So, but thank you for all the work that you do and represent Metro Fire. We'll be moving on to the action items. CFO Thomas, which is a fiscal 2018-19 final budget.
What are you setting your timer for?
Yeah. How long
You tell me. Okay. Good evening, directors, Chief Harms. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer. I'm here this evening to present the final budget for fiscal year 2018-19. I will mention that the budget was presented to the Finance and Audit Committee on August 23rd, and there have been no substantive changes to the budget since that presentation. Just to kind of talk a little bit about where we are in the budget process. So if you'll remember, the preliminary budget for this year, fiscal year 18-19, was adopted by the board on June 14th. At that time, we had a balanced general fund budget, so our financing sources equaled our financing uses, and essentially no addition or subtraction from our reserves. So now the changes that we're proposing with the final budget relative to the currently adopted preliminary budget is that we're looking at an overall general fund revenue increase of about $600,000. It's primarily because property taxes we are now estimating to be higher than we estimated at preliminary budget. We also have identified about $300,000 more in general fund expenditures and transfers out. But probably the biggest change is that we have a $3.2 million increase in our estimated beginning reserve balance. And that's resulting from the fact that we now have estimated results for fiscal year 17-18. So when we prepared the preliminary budget, we were working off of our mid-year budget. We now have estimated results for the year, which are $3.2 million better than budget. So for 17-18, we have budgeted for a general fund deficit of about $1 million. We're now estimating a surplus of $2.2 million, so overall $3.2 million improvement. So that starts us off at a higher reserve level. So while we were projecting a 10% general fund reserve ratio at the end of 18-19 based on preliminary budget, now with this final budget, we're projecting a 12% reserve ratio at the end of the year, so an improvement there of 2 percentage points. So that kind of describes the changes from preliminary budget to final budget. Now, as I move through the presentation, I'm really going to be talking about year-over-year changes, so from 17-18 to 18-19. So starting off, just looking at the 18-19 budget, and this chart is showing us all of the funds that we will have a budget for. The general fund being the column all the way to the left, and what I'm going to focus on for most of the presentation. You can see that we're budgeting for general fund revenues of about $203 million. General fund expenses of about $204 million, and then we have transfers in and out. So the transfers out are primarily to the Capital Facilities Fund, but also to the Grant and Lease Properties Fund, and those are then more than offset by our transfers that are coming in from the IGT fund. So we have about $6.2 million of IGT funding that essentially gets added to that $203 million in revenues. And overall, when you look at revenues, expenses, and transfers, you can see the bottom line is about a $300,000 surplus. So our revenues and our IGT transfer in are about $300,000 more than our expenses and our transfers out to the capital facilities and other funds. The other thing I wanted to mention here on this chart, because I won't talk about it again, is that we do have, and this is not a change from preliminary budget, but just a reminder, we have a special item this year. So we have pension obligation bonds. One of the series is callable in this year, and per board policy, we will be redeeming those bonds. So it's $25.5 million. Has been set aside every year in our pension bond stabilization fund, and we will actually be using that money this year to redeem those bonds. Okay, so looking a little bit closer at the general fund and the year-over-year changes, the first highlighted column is what we are estimating for results in fiscal year 17-18. I will point out that these are estimates that don't include accruals and other adjustments that will occur as a result of the audit process. So then the numbers that get reported in our financial statements in our CAFR will be different than these numbers, but these are the estimates as of this point in time. So that's last year, 17-18. And then the blue highlighted column is this proposed final budget for 18-19. So you can see, looking again at the top line, as I said, about $203 million in budgeted revenues. That's about an $8.7 million increase from 17-18. Looking at our labor costs, we have a little under $174 million budgeted. That's about a $7.3 million increase from last year. And then overall total expenditures, $204 million, and that's just under $11 million increase. Again, looking at those transfers, you can see that the IGT transfer in, that $6.2 million, is about $200,000 higher than the 17-18 number. But our transfers out are also about $200,000 higher, so that's essentially a wash there. And then overall, we get to that bottom line of about a $300,000 surplus in fiscal year 18-19. Looking at our revenue history, this is a chart that you're familiar with seeing, but I think, looking at this, we can see that 18-19 is really a continuation of the post-recession trend of increasing revenues. So this will be the 6th consecutive year of increased property tax revenues, and I think overall the 8th consecutive year of increased total revenue. So we're seeing that trend continue here. This chart does include IGT revenues, so that's why you're seeing a total of $209 million for 18-19. It's the general fund revenues plus the IGT transfer in. Looking at the composition of our revenues, so of that $209 million total, property taxes represent about 71%. The intergovernmental category is really property tax related revenues. It's money from redevelopment agencies and other property tax related revenues, so that's another 2%. And then our second largest category of revenues are charges for services, so that includes our medic cost recovery and our inspection and plan review fees, and that's about 23% of total revenues. That operating transfer in, that's our IGT, the $6.2 million, that's 3%, and then finally miscellaneous other revenues, about 0.4%. So, as I mentioned, projected general fund revenues of $203 million in 18-19. Overall, that's a $9 million increase compared to our estimates for 17-18. The primary reason for that is a $7 million increase in property tax revenues, so that's a 5% increase year over year. And then we're also projecting a $2 million increase for medic cost recovery. And then finally, we have that net IGT revenue of $6 million that's coming in. So for the total revenues and financing sources of $209 million in the general fund. So when we look at our expenditures, which are also about $209 million, you can see that labor costs represent about 83% of that total, services and supplies about 13%. Our third category of expenditures, taxes, licenses, debt service, and others is 1.7%. And then the transfers out, again, mostly going to the Capital Facilities Fund, about 2.2%. Looking at the labor budget, as I mentioned, $174 million. That's a $7 million increase compared to 17-18. Some of the changes from 17-18 include the 2.2% wage increase that was effective on July 1st. There's also increases in pension and OPEB costs that we've talked about. And offsetting that somewhat is that we do have a reduction in pension bond debt service just as a result of how the debt service was scheduled. So there's sort of a one-time reduction in 17-18. Additionally, impacting the labor budget is the expiration of the SAFER grant. So that grant is funding 9 firefighter positions. It's effectively going to fund about 3 months of cost in 18-19, and then the remainder is funded with the general fund, whereas 12 months were funded in 17-18. And then finally, just as a reminder, our budgeting approach is to budget that all of the authorized positions are filled. So we budget for salaries and benefits for all authorized positions. That results in us having a reduced overtime budget because we're not budgeting for overtime associated with the vacancies. So those two things essentially offset each other. But that's just a difference that you will see in a budget compared to an actual number. Looking at our services and supplies budget, that budget totals $27 million. That's a $3 million increase compared to 17-18 estimates. The increases we're seeing primarily for dispatch, safety clothing and supplies, training, insurance premiums, communications equipment, and our ERP system implementation. Those increases are partially offset by some reductions in fire equipment supply and vehicle maintenance services due to one-time expenditures that we had in 17-18. And finally, our third category of general fund expenses is debt service assessments and contributions. That budget totals $3.5 million. That's about a $400,000 increase compared to last year. The largest component in that budget is the assessment that gets paid to the county for property tax administration. So that's $1.8 million of the $3.5 million. We also have about $800,000 in contributions to other agencies, including some one-time cost in 18-19 for a server at Dispatch that's really contributing to the fact that we have an overall increase year over year. And that, as I mentioned, that's a one-time 18-19 expense. And then finally, in this category, we have general fund debt service payments that total about another $800,000. So lease revenue bonds of $300,000, IT equipment financing of $300,000, and radio financing of $300,000. So looking at the transfers, as I mentioned, we have the transfers going out to the Capital Facilities Fund and the transfer coming in from the IGT. The net is a net transfer in of $1.6 million, resulting from that $6.2 million transfer in minus the $4.6 million going out. So looking at the Capital Facilities Fund, looking again year over year here, our total expenditures in the Capital Facilities Fund are about $12.7 million. That's a $5.9 million increase compared to 17-18. Our financing sources are about $10.5 million, and that's about a $3.8 million increase compared to 17-18. And then the difference between the two, this $2 million is funded with existing fund balance in the Capital Facilities Fund. And that is essentially amounts that were not spent in 17-18. So they're items that we intended to purchase in 17-18 and financed in 17-18, but were not purchased in 17-18 and will be in 18-19 using the existing fund balance. So just to summarize that, there is a net funding requirement of $5 million. That's a transfer that's coming from the general fund to the Capital Facilities Fund, and that's primarily funding the debt service payments that are made out of that fund. Our capital outlay, so the actual capital items that will be purchased in 18-19, totals $8 million. And this includes those rebudgeted purchases from 17-18, that about $2 million that's funded with existing fund balance. And then some of the major new purchases for 18-19 are listed here. So we have our ERP system implementation, that's 1.9, 2 Type 1 engines for $1 million, 2 water tenders for $900,000, 3 ambulances for $600,000, and an air rig for $600,000. Those are the major items. Obviously, there are other items contributing to the total $8 million in capital outlay. Turning to look at our grants fund. We have about $400,000 budgeted in revenues and expenditures. This is primarily for the remaining months of that SAFER grant. That's what most of this expenditure and revenue activity is related to. Obviously, as additional grant awards are made, we would come to the board and amend this budget to reflect those expenditures and offsetting grant revenues. And finally, looking at our leased properties fund, and this is where we account for the revenues and expenses associated with the district's leased property. We're budgeting revenues of a little under $700,000. You can see that this is about a $340,000 increase compared to 17-18. The reason for the increase is that we have a tenant on the first floor of this building, and that's going to result in a resumption of that lease revenue, which will be an improvement compared to last year. Expenditures are a little over $1 million, and you'll see that that is a decrease compared to last year of over $500,000, and that's because in 17-18 we had some one-time costs associated with tenant improvements in this building that we no longer have in 18-19. We do still have a transfer that's coming in from the general fund of a little under $100,000, but you can see that this is, again, almost $500,000 less than what last year's transfer in was. And then there's about $240,000 in existing fund balance in the leased properties fund that's making up the difference between the expenditures on the one hand and revenues and transfer from the general fund on the other hand. So kind of looking in summary a little bit, if we look at our reserves, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have an improvement in our projected general fund reserve as of June 30th, 2019. So we're projecting $25 million in general fund reserves, which would be 12% of net budgeted expenditures. And then, just to sort of highlight some of the issues that we have talked about and that are reflected in this budget and will continue to be things that I think we talk about as we move into future year budgets. We have challenges surrounding pension costs. We've seen an increase this year. We expect that increase will continue related to amortization of our unfunded liability, and as the discount rate reduction or the assumed investment earnings reduction continues to get fully phased in, we're going to see that year-over-year increase continue to happen. And then on the capital replacement and maintenance needs side of things, you saw in this year's budget an increase in capital outlay. I think we can expect that to continue as we have, apparatus and other vehicle replacement needs. We're also in the process of completing the facilities condition assessment, which will identify needs at our fire stations and other facilities. And then finally, we have an SCBA replacement need that there's a grant pending for now, but we know that there will be local funds needed for that as well. So those are all things that sort of are on the horizon in terms of funding challenges that will be addressed in this year and future year budgets. And then finally, the intergovernmental transfer program, we talked about how that's providing about $6 million of funding, and that is a funding source that helps us make up for some of the undercompensated costs that we have associated with the Medicaid transports. It's a program that has been that has uncertainty surrounding it, and from year to year hasn't always provided a consistent level or timing of payment. So I think as we look to approach this program going forward, I think that the approach of first determining how much funding is available before we program it for use in the general fund is one that we're going to continue with. And secondly, probably looking to transition this funding source as being dedicated more to one-time uses as opposed to ongoing uses due to the uncertainty of what funding may be available going forward. So that sort of summarizes, what's reflected in this year's budget, and I think what we can continue to see as we move forward into the next 5 years. And with that, the recommendation is to adopt the final budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that report. Comments, questions?
I have a question.
Director Gale.
Say if you did the admin internally instead of the county, would the cost be much more to do if you did it internally?
I'm sorry, are you asking about the property tax administration?
Yeah.
We don't actually have the option. The county collects property taxes for all jurisdictions within the county.
Mm-hmm. There's no option. Okay.
No option.
Mm-hmm.
Director Orzali, did you have something?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
CFO Thomas, thank you very much for the report. The Finance Committee received the very same report, and we pushed it onto the board, and I would move for adoption. And we will need to do each one separately.
Yes, we're going to get repetitive here, but we will have to do each one. Ms. Thomas, thank you very much for that and breaking that down where you actually understand that it means a lot, so thank you.
Thank you.
Especially to me. Okay, we're going to move down each item, fiscal year 2019 final budget, resolution 1819, General Operation Fund 2012A.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that one.
I need a second. I have a first and second.
Director Gale.
Yes.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets. Wood.
Aye.
Clark. Kelly.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on to B, resolution 2018-19 final budget for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D.
I'll move that one, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and second.
Director Gale.
Yes.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets. Wood.
Aye.
Clark. Kelly.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to C, resolution 2018-19 final budget for the committed fund balance for the pension obligation fund 212E. I can't even speak right now.
I'll move that one, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second, Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali, Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to D, Resolution 2018-19 Final Budget for the Pension Obligation Bond, Fund 212E.
I'll move D, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali, Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to E, Resolution 2018-19 Final Budget for the Grants Fund 212G.
I'll move F.
I'll
Well,
second.
E is on the table. Sorry.
Oh,
E.
E, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Motion
Second.
and a second.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And moving on to F, Resolution 2018 and 19 Final Budget for the Development Impact Fees Fund 212I.
I'll move that. I'll move F.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And moving on to G, Resolution 2018-19 Final Budget for the Leased Properties Fund 212L.
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion and a second. Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And moving on to the final one, H, Resolution 2018-19 Final Budget for the IGT Fund 212M.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report out and all the work that you and your team do for us and get those numbers to us. Moving on to the reports, President's report, I do not have any at this time. And moving on to the Fire Chief's report, Chief Harms.
I have about 9 minutes that I need to go through here.
6 minutes, no.
I'm going to put you on a timer.
Start the timer now.
Yep.
First, with all joking aside, I'd like to thank Chief Law and Chief Griggs for their leadership that they have jumped right into EMS along with their staff over there. And we have spent a lot of time together figuring out where we've been, where we're at today, and where we want to be tomorrow. So thank you for the presentation of 12 minutes and 18 seconds. A couple new hires. On September 4th, we had a plant intake specialist, Michael Tomey, and we also had a fire inspector one, Matthew Whitney. Some promotions in the SRP program, our members going from EMT to paramedic. We had Tyler Impey, Alec Shack, and Lorenzo Wood. So congratulations to them as they've gone through and were EMTs with us and have gone through the paramedic program and now paramedics. And as Chief Law said, Captain Brian Benton is now on the EMS day captain working with us. So that is good. It's been 3 weeks, so a number of meetings that myself that I've attended along with my staff. On August 29th was a day of meetings. The first half of the day, we had our monthly meeting with labor and management and sat down and talked a lot about staffing and where we're at today and kind of a plan for the fire season that's going on and as far as moving forward. Also in the afternoon, we had our EMS 2020 meeting. Director Sheets was able to attend that. It's the fire chiefs from the region here along with the labor reps, along with dispatch and some of our medical directors, and talk about where we're at today on EMS and where we're going in the future. One of the things that we've been working on there, and Director Gould, you bring it up, is about the workload of our medics. And so for the last about 6 or 8 months, what we have done is talked about across the board that workload and the ability to impact it. And a lot of times what you see is we'll just add more ambulances. And we know that we could do that all day and have a very small impact. So we went through the system which is called Emergency Medical Dispatching, EMD. And we went through and identified, and I believe, and Chief Johnson is here, and I'm not going to get them all right, but I think they reviewed almost 1,800 dispatch codes. And what did we send on those codes? They identified a number of those that less than 20% of the time did we actually transport someone to the hospital. We all feel that it is important that when that call comes in is that we have a response. So through the EMD process, truly that was started in 1988. What we have said is we want to send the right resources with the right code at the right time. And so on September 10th, we implemented a reduction of still sending our units on those calls, but not sending an ambulance. And so we'll go through over the next 6 months and look at the impact of that, and we'll look at the impact that it has on the medics. One of the things that I think we will see in it, one of the things we hope to see out of it, is that a medic is on the road going to a call they're not using, they get diverted to the next call, then they get diverted to the next call, and before long they're not in their first due, they're 2-3 dues that are over. Hopefully with this and with the reduction on that dispatching for them is that they hopefully stay within their first due or second due a little bit more. So we've got a lot of good data that we'll use as the past, and we'll look at that in 6 months and look at the backside of it. I had talked with the dispatch center on that Monday night when we first did the implementation, and it was a very positive response from the crews that were in the field, and the dispatchers felt very positive as far as being able to truly implement EMD a lot closer to what it has been made for in '88, 30 years later now, being able to do that. So we're hoping to look at that and see what impact that has, because the medics that are busy are busy. On Sunday 9/9 for the Sunday, which was 9/9, they had the 9/11 run that was downtown. And then on September 11th, they had the stair climb. One of our members and one of the members from the city are part of the team that put that together. Myself and Chief Bridge went down and ran the run on that Sunday. We had just a great turnout of folks from Metro Fire. But I was just really surprised how many people came out, and they had sold that race out as far as numbers being into it and the amount of people that were out there. And then on 9/11, they did the climb, in which they have 343 members from around the region all climb the building. Each one of them carries a name of a firefighter in New York that was killed. It was another really well-organized and well-done event, and it was a great way to honor the folks of 9/11. Also, I went to the CalJack recruitment last Saturday, and we were part of the places, departments all across what I would say Northern California that was there. It was very well attended by young and old folks, older folks that all want to be firefighters. Our recruitment team was out there. I spent quite a bit of time out there, and it was a really good event to attend and kind of watch our team, but also watch the other folks and what we're doing as far as recruiting. We'll talk more about recruiting in the future. 2 dates for you to save. On September 21st to the 23rd is the Capitol Air Show. Also on that Friday, the 21st, is the retirement dinner. And if you remember, that is from everybody that retired in 2017 will be honored on that night at the retirement dinner. So if you guys can put that on your schedule then. The last thing I just wanted to, and Chief Law talked a little bit about it, as this being the Suicide Prevention or Awareness Month. In the past few weeks, there has been a number of firefighters in California that have prevented suicide or have died of suicide. Unfortunately, the CPF, along with the California Fire Chiefs Association, has identified this week as a stand down. We have participated in it and taking the information, the resources, the peer support teams, the ops chiefs, along with the professional staff, have put that out to our members to bring that awareness forward as we move on. One of the things that has happened is that we have started to take and maintain statistics on suicides and line of duty deaths. And this is the first year that the actual suicides are outnumbering line of duty deaths. I'm not real sure that maybe in the past it wasn't the same, but we have never kept statistics, and so we're doing those. So the safety stand down is going on, and Metro Fire and Local 522 together, myself and Trevor both put messages out to the members along with the ops ACs. That ends my report unless you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the chief?
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Director Gale.
You're talking about the increase in service calls. If we had probably someone with one of these cards, industrial engineering, we could determine what we needed labor force to take care of that job. Have those jobs ever been audited by an industrial engineer? How do they determine how much they can do, what the staffing should be?
I don't know which card you
when I was
have.
doing it.
No, I understand, but
What's the
question?
card?
We seem to be, our job, the work has been increased tremendously. And that's something important because if you don't have the staff there, you get overwork, accident happens. Can we have someone to come and make a study of it and make the adjustments to the staffing?
Are you mentioning like a safety officer to take a
Yeah.
look at?
We call them industrial engineers.
Gotcha.
So one of the topics I didn't talk about tonight, but part of EMS 2020 is what we're going to do is called a standards of coverage. And what the standards of coverage is going to do is look at the city, metro, Folsom, and Consumnes. And it'll go through and it'll look at our demographics. It'll look at the call volume, where the call volume are at, what are your heat maps. We'll take those and we'll look at the areas that we cover. We'll apply that to the NFPA Standard 1710 and look at where we're at today and then where we want to be in the future. Director Gould mentioned another part that will be in there, which is the unit hour utilization of our ambulances. And so that'll be part of that study that we're going through and looking at and truly taking a look at it from a statistical side and say, where is our work at and what is that workload that we're doing. The other side, when you talk about the industrial side of it, is that the IFF or the firefighters have done a lot of work in looking at the fire ground and the activity that you do, along with the EMS side of it, and what are those injuries prevention, what things can we do for injury prevention. I'm sure that Vice President Trevor Jamison could talk about it more, but the IFF has decided to put on a train-the-trainer program here at Metro. And what we will receive is all the equipment, and we'll be the host agency. They will pay for that, and maybe he can talk about when he gets up. I think we get to send somewhere between 25 and 40 of our members through that program, which looks at the health and the wellness of our members.
You know, you don't get, well, as a matter of fact, I went and include Sac City. They can't even keep up with their suppliers, as a matter of fact. I still say that there's a need for an industrial engineer to study scientifically. Other than that, you can't make guesses at it.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. All right, moving on. If we don't have anything else, we'll move on to operations report. Chief Bridge.
Good evening, President Barnes, directors. Eric Bridge, Deputy Chief Operations. I'll attempt to be brief tonight with the report, but I do want to give you a good status with our current members and where they're at today. As most of you are aware, there's a Category 2 storm now. It was Category 4 bearing down on North Carolina and the East Coast. So we have 4 of our members that are part of 2 Swiftwater teams, part of the Urban Search and Rescue Task Force, that have been broken up into 2 teams, 2 16-person teams. So we have 2 on one and 2 on the other. They're one of them's already in North Carolina, and the other one will be there by tomorrow morning in preparation of that storm hitting the East Coast. So good news is it's down to a Category 2, but the bad news is they're predicting heavy rainfall. But we are participating there. In addition to that, we have a couple of strike teams out, and more of a reminder that our strike teams are 5 like engines that go out with a strike team leader. So of the 10 engines, 6 of them are ours. We have an all-Metro strike team that's at the Delta incident up by the Shasta Trinity Forest, and then also another regional strike team that's made up of Cosumnes, Sac City, and us. So those, they've been up there for a while on that fire up there, shut down I-5 just north of Reading. The good news is the weather's cooperating, and they will be, our all-Metro team will be back tomorrow, and then the regional strike team will be back on Saturday. We also, our dozer has been very active in the Amador El Dorado unit up there, and as CAL FIRE continues to respond to most of these incidents, they get short in their area. We have a great working relationship with the Amador El Dorado unit, and they always call us first to help them out in the staffing area, and we have a really good working relationship. So we've continued to cover them in their area, and while maintaining our own dozer operations here locally. So we always, again, as a reminder, we keep our area protected first, and when we are able to participate and provide coverage, we do that. And we likewise, same with the copter, as the copter spent 31 days at the Mendocino fire. So, and they're now back and resting, well-deserved rest that they're getting. So let's see what else I have for you. Just a couple overhead folks that have been assigned out on the Curlin incident. The Curlin incident's up near the Delta incident, which is in the Shasta Trinity Forest as well. They're working as equipment managers and task force leaders. So they'll be unknown at this point when they'll return. I think I have everybody covered at that point for now. So real quick, thanks, Chief Law. Great report. And I thought it was timely. It was perfect. So, and your staff, great. Thanks for being here and showing the support. A lot of good things coming from EMS now. I'm pretty excited about where we're headed with the changes over in dispatch. The biggest, really, and to add on to what Chief Harms was talking about, one of the big beneficiaries that we always like to take care of our members, but our first primary mission is to serve the citizens. The citizens will actually have more opportunity for an ALS ambulance because of we are now addressing the dispatch the way we're sending the call out. So that's the biggest benefit. For the community, if you think about it. There's other byproduct benefits of it that we were talking about. Absolutely, those are benefits. But the biggest one is the public. They're going to get that opportunity to have a 911 paramedic ambulance available more frequently than they have in the past. So anyway, I just wanted to add that on. That's all I have tonight, unless you have any questions.
Thank you for the report. Any questions or comments? Thank you.
Thanks.
Sacramento Firefighters Local 522, Vice President Jameson.
Good evening, Directors, President Barnes, Chief Harms, staff. Again, I want to echo the report tonight. Amanda, excuse me, great job. Barbie, great job. EMS staff, they're doing a great job. It's kind of this, I kind of probably talk about a little something different than I was going to, but just to echo, I think when you try to look at what the fire service has done and we try to analyze it, I think we're one of these jobs where I sometimes think we do too good of a job. The public calls us for everything. We don't say no. We get more and more responsibility to the public. And, you know, it's everything now. I mean, there's people calling us because their drone is stuck in a tree, right? And then then people are also expecting us to put the fire out to deliver high-level medical care. And anything we can do to enhance our service, take care of the membership so they can provide either more service or also just some wellness. And that's what I think what Chief Harms is talking about is we're actively looking at how do we still deliver that high level of service and survive and take care of our membership, get the rest we need, get the physical fitness that we need. I think I maybe mentioned this months ago, but I had a couple 40-hour shift where I did everything from change batteries and a smoke detector to was first in on a fire. And, you know, the public expects that, and we want to deliver it, and we do a great job, but it does take a toll, and it gets more and more, there's more and more people in the world, there's more and more demands on our service. And with dispatch, and just the overall talking about the wellness, the physical fitness, the mental health, I think we're finally starting to look at it. You're starting to see some studies, starting to see the push for studies. Even here, like I said, I got to be honest, the engagement with the board, the engagement from 5-2, the engagement from the staff, not a day goes by pretty much where the chief and I don't text. If a member is hurt, a member is sick, we're texting back and forth, checking on them. It's important, and it's inherent in the fire service. And again, I appreciate where we're headed with that. It's going to take some time to gather that data. It's going to take time to see how this new dispatch affects our members. But it needs to be done. And again, I appreciate the engagement that I have with you, with the chief, and I think the dialogue we're having now is only going to get better. And I think we'll be able to help push this forward, at least on a local level, if not a state and national level, just with Metro Fire being part of that. And just that's all I have to say about that. Finally, I will be traveling. Well, actually, first, I got to just mention the 9/11 stair climb. My calves are killing me. I did it for the second year in a row. I hadn't done it in a few years before that, but it's an amazing event that our membership, many from Metro, many from the city and all around, people come around to do that. And to do that, to see the sacrifice that people pay the ultimate price on 9/11. And between that and the run, it's still a very important day, and it's funny as you get older and you look back and you try to make the younger generation remember that and the sacrifice people paid before them. And I think it's very important in our historical perspective that we maintain that, because the fire service is built on the history, and like I talked about earlier, the public demands more and more out of us, and it's important that we remember where we came from. And just finally to close, I will be traveling to Colorado Springs this weekend for the Fallen Firefighter Memorial. We will be honoring Airport Captain Tim Anderson. His family will be traveling back there, and we'll be back there as a local supporting his family as he's honored. His memory is honored. So again, it's just part of the fire service, taking care of each other. And I think I said this final thing is to me, the fire service, one of the foundational principles of the fire service is taking care of each other. And if we take care of each other, we do a much better job of taking care of the public, and they benefit from that. So again, that's it. Thank you very much. Good night. Unless you have any questions.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Any questions or comments?
Nothing on the IAFF mention that the chief made?
I'm sorry, yes. Basically with that, the IFF has programs that they can roll out nationally, and what we're attempting to do and bring out here, and we're in the process, is a wellness training program that will help our members with physical fitness and kind of a standardized way to look at things. And it is with a partnership between the IFF, the local 522, and the district to get that done. And we're in the planning phases of that right now. Yep.
Thank you again for being here.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to committee and delegate reports. Executive committee did not meet. We don't have a meeting planned anytime in the near future. Communications Center, JPA, Assistant Chief Johnson.
Good evening, directors, Chief Arms, 22-second clock set. The Comm Center JPA met last on Tuesday, where we discussed a strategic plan for the Comm Center. We also talked about the consultant report that was just delivered to us, and by which we're going to bring, or could bring, new members into the center. Joe Thusen was named as our new executive director on a permanent basis, and Kylie Soros was named as the deputy director.
That's very good.
Joe had 21 years of experience, and Kylie has 23 years of experience, and they're both internal candidates. Our next meeting is September 25th, 9 a.m. right here. End of report.
Thank you very much.
That's really good.
Moving on to the California Fire Rescue JPA, Chief Shannon.
I will be much quicker. We have not met for some time. We will meet next Thursday at 4 o'clock across the hall. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the extensive report. Appreciate it. Moving on to the Finance and Audit Committee, Director Wood.
I guess that's me. We've not met since our last meeting. We will next meet on Thursday, the 27th, at 5 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Policy Committee, Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I plan on taking 10 minutes. The Policy Committee, as you all know, the fall season is the time when we look at policies and take a great deal of time in reviewing them. So I fully expect that the season of the fall be a time when we look at whatever policies you can find that need to be dusted off so that this illustrious group of policy committee members can meet and discuss and contemplate changes. How much more time do I got?
You're expired.
9 minutes. So then thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Moving on to board members' questions and comments before going on to closed session. Starting to my far right, Director Gale.
As Board of Directors, must remember that it's the public's business, not behind shifts or shaft, what have you. Great responsibility. It is to the public. It's their business, their money, and we should respect that.
Thank you for your comments. Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to publicly thank Congressman Barra and his staff for taking the lead in a topic that we talked about at Cap to Cap. And that's really the mental health and well-being of our first responders and our law enforcement and fire folks. And so I really wanted to just publicly thank him as the lead in that bill that he's now presented. And I hope our team stays engaged with his staff so we can see that all the way through to the president's desk and have that signed so that we can really make some changes at the national level. And I really wanted to thank Congressman Berry for his work. Be safe, and I hope that in his development of this bill, he also looks at the impact that these dispatches that we have in our task force groups, when they go back to these natural disasters and the impact that that has on our employees. It's one thing to do local calls and deal with the issues there. It's another to go back to something that's so gigantic it's hard to get your head around. And I think oftentimes our men and women come back, and I think we really need to integrate whatever comes out of that bill into making sure that these men and women who are sent out to these major events have some immediate care provided to them when they return, instead of just waiting around for the symptoms to come, which may happen years later. So I hope that we stay on top of his staff and we make sure that that's a great bill and get it signed and get some things changed. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Director Orzali.
Just very briefly, I had the opportunity to meet with 522's representatives this week, and as I told Trevor then, I really appreciate the time and the direction that we seem to be headed. This is a very collaborative venue, and we may not always agree, but we always have the opportunity to sit and discuss and try and understand the other person's perspective. So thank you.
Thank you very much. To my far left, Director Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wanted to thank CFO Thomas for hearing that report again. It always helps things sink in a little bit. I'd like to thank Chief Law for her presentation, and then I would like to wish Godspeed to all of the personnel that we have that are out helping others.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Director Clark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank everyone for their presentation, and also I very much appreciate 522 Trevor's little report. I think it was very enlightening. Thank you for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Clark. Director Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Want to say congratulations to Chief Law, Chief Griggs. Thanks for the presentation. It was very well done. I know I was one of the people who've asked for some data on single roll, and appreciate you guys delivering it to us, so thank you. As always, Amanda, thanks for the financial presentations. Like Matt, it does help sink in for me as well. And lastly, Trevor, safe travels to you, the families that are going back with you to Colorado Springs. I look forward to hearing about that when you get back. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Wood. Director Sheets.
Good evening. I wanted to congratulate all the promotions. It's really great to hear that we have our single roles and they're moving up the ranks within our, our departments, our organization. I think it was very interesting to hear the EMS presentation, and it's really great that we are now planning forward also and that we have a plan. I appreciate your comments about the Lucas device. I am fortunate enough that I get to have the receiving end, and I get to actually see the patients who do walk out of the hospital and how amazing that device is. And if anybody, and I'm sure there's lots of paramedics in here, have been on the first cracking of the ribs, it's one of those things where you back off and you're just not doing CPR correctly because you're afraid you're going to break more ribs. So it's great that, unfortunately, the device is doing that, but it's high quality, effective CPR that is showing us that people are surviving these incidents. So also mental health awareness is extremely important, not only to my profession, but also the mental health of our members. I think that we owe it to our members to make sure that they are getting the services that they need. And I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we at least offer these services, our members will take that up. It used to be that, we're paramedics, we're ER, we can handle this, and you just keep suppressing it, and then all of a sudden you're in the grocery store and you think about something that just happened and you lose it. So it's really, really great, and I appreciate the fact that we are increasing awareness. And then also congratulations to Joe and Kylie. Thank you, Chief Grigg, for the tickets to the air show. I look forward to it, and I look forward to going to the retirement dinner.
Thank you for your comments. Finally, as I always say, going last is no fun, but I'll do my best. Congratulations to the promotees, Joe, Kylie also. We're fan favorites, so congratulations for that position. Trevor, thank you for representing us back there on that level and platform. Safe travels, and we look forward to that report out as well. One thing I'm near and dear is the Pig Bowl Guns and Hoses. We have a wine event coming up on the 29th here in Rancho Cordova at the Marriott Hotel. It's a Saturday night. So I expect ticket sales to skyrocket after this meeting. But it is a fundraiser. As you know, we've donated a lot of money from that organization to the Firefighter Brand Institute, and it's something that's near and dear to us. This year, as an organization from the nonprofit Guns and Hoses, we have decided to dedicate this game to the fire service and all the people that responded to the car fire and everybody else that held the fort down here while the strike teams were gone. So we're going to be making big announcements of what that is as far as getting to the game and recognition during the game. So we're looking forward to that. But we'd love to see if you can on the 29th. Sport's a great cause again, gives back to the local charities. Mental health is something that is big in it's something we've talked about many times, but I will tell you, you figure a membership goes on these calls because people are in crisis. Then they continue to go on many more calls while they're staying. Then they get to go home and sit at the dinner table and their kids get to ask them, how was work? And most often, just like many, humble, it was great. Although they bury everything that they've seen, been exposed to, just because that's their job and it's a humble profession. Over a 20, 25, and even 30-year career compounds. It's like holding 5 beach balls underwater at one time. It's not going to happen. Bad things are going to pop up. So thank you for taking the lead on that. The fact that Metro Fire could be kind of the founding person there with some of the equipment and the rollout is huge again. Puts us as a first-class organization, and I appreciate everybody paying attention to that because that is important and is needed. So with that, thank you, everybody that was here. All the reports out, amazing. Again, I think in the 4 years that I've been here and blessed, I can't believe it's gone that fast already, to see everybody working together for the same common goal, from the membership, from the 522 side, from the management team, and as a board. It's a great place to be. So again, thank you for everybody. With that, we will go into closed session. We'll adjourn the meeting, and no offense, but we don't want to see you when you come out here. Thank you.
This is your part right here, but this is your part.
Okay, we're all back. We'll call the open session back to order, but before we do, I just want to make a public note of record that Director Gale had left and was not part of closed session, and we weren't aware before he left. So, Council Lauber.
All right, thank you, Director. The board met in closed session to consider the government code 910 claims of two individuals identified in 1A and 1B, Ola Kolba and Christina Volashuk. The board unanimously decided to reject those claims under the pertinent provisions of the government code. The board also met with respect to public employee performance evaluations for the fire chief in item 2 and the board clerk. Under item 3, no action was taken.
Thank you very much. Next board meeting is September 27th at 6 p.m. in these chambers. Meeting adjourned.